and welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to confidence in starting and growing your business. My guest this week is Dunn, co-founder of Paper Planes. Now, that's a business that has helped transform the way e-commerce brands use data to deliver direct mail campaigns, amongst other things. And today, Paper Planes works with some of the fastest growing brands in the market. But what really fascinated me about Dan's story is that underneath all that newfangled technology, analytics, and marketing expertise is a very traditional entrepreneurial spirit at work. Dan has wanted to be in business for as long as he can remember. While other children might have dreamt of becoming footballers or astronauts, Dan was already imagining himself as a businessman, building something of his own. And his journey took him through a series of commercial roles before eventually leading him to launch Paper Planes with his co-founder Steve Kinder. But let's go back to the start as always. I started by asking Dan where that entrepreneurial instinct first came from.
I mean, the best example of a entrepreneur that I can think of in my family was my dear old nan. She used to go to a jumble sale every Saturday. She used to sell men's shoes, and she used to get the men's shoes at jumble sales like every Saturday for about 20, 50p, whatever she could. She was a hard negotiator. Like, she could really bring you down on price on these shoes. She would do them up. She would get them nice. She would polish them up. She would get them looking presentable. And then the next day, she'd be at 3 a.m. in the morning. She'd be in the queue for Birmingham, the boot sale, which is in right in the Birmingham city centre. She'd be in the line at 3 a.m. to get her favourite spot. And she would then sell those shoes for about £5, £6, £7 a piece. So that entrepreneurial flair was there quite early on. And of course, I knew that. I used to go to the boot sales. We used to be on the boot sales with her, kind of like watching her do this.
Yeah.
So that always stood out for me. I had an auntie and uncle who were quite successful in business. But no, I mean, my mum and dad, they weren't entrepreneurs. They were kind of like, it wasn't something that I saw in terms of a family business that I really wanted to take on. My dad came over from Ireland. He was a bus driver in Birmingham. So, for me, I just always loved business, and I always have loved business, and I always wanted to run a business. And when I would tell people what it was that I was going to do when I was older, it was going to be a businessman.
Right. Okay.
I didn't know what that meant, but essentially it was going to be a businessman. So it was always there. I always thought I'd want to do something, but I didn't know what it was going to be and when the opportunity was going to come.
That's interesting. So, I mean, most people that age will say, "I want to be an astronaut or a footballer or things like that." Did you get much comeback, or did people say, "Really, how interesting?" Or was there a sort of prairie wind silence when you said that sort of thing?
Well, I would have loved to have been a footballer, but I was quite a rotund little fellow. So unless I was going to go down a route of maybe rugby or something like that in the scrum, I don't think I was going to make that dream or that aspiration happen. But I don't know. For me, I think it just comes down to what makes sense to you at the time. I just loved, I guess, the idea of seeing someone in with a nice suit and a nice car, and the measure of success is the fact that they can go wherever they want on holiday, they can do wherever they want. I like that idea of, okay, well, truly to be a business person means you're successful and you've got money. But as I got older, of course, it was more like, I just want to build something. I want to build something. If you ask the team today within Paper Planes, one of the things that we share all the time is something we call startup stories, where we're going back and we're looking at the origins of companies that can range from Netflix through to Konica, through to kind of like Claude and Anthropic. I'm always obsessed with how businesses grow and the right decisions that get you towards that, and the ones that necessarily don't go that well. It's just something that I just have a real passion for.
Okay, so we're going to come to Paper Planes, soon in terms of, the startup that you co-founded with Steve Kinder, but you built your early career in a very different way. You started to work for Tesco, Dunn, other brands as well. take me through that time about what did you learn, and did they actually prepare you for entrepreneurship, or did they serve as a way of thinking, no, I want to be an entrepreneur, I don't want to do this? Were there learnings in there, or was it something that confirmed that actually you wanted to be a businessman in the sense of your own boss?
I'm gonna jump to like what I think is one of the most important lessons in terms of what I believe makes an entrepreneur, and then I'm gonna come back again because I know Trevor,
Yeah.
that's probably going to ruin your structure, and you're probably going to ask me this later on. And
I'm
but
absolutely fine with that. Go for it.
it
Yeah.
it brings me to I think what is I one of the most important lessons for entrepreneurship, and that is you've got to realize that no one is going to do anything for you at any moment in time. It's not about what other people are going to make happen for you. It's all about your own motivation, being able to get up and being able to do it yourself. And I think for me, that was in me at an early age. So going back to those whole examples with my nan and the boot sales and the jumble sales and seeing that hustle through to, when I was at school, having to knowing as soon as I was 16, getting a part-time job because I wanted to make money that I could then earn myself. Through to I worked at Disney World for a year in Florida. I worked in service in Disney World, where basically you get paid $2 an hour, but you make your money on tips. So you make your money on your graft and your hard work and your personality. Well, an important lesson that was in terms of, self-realization and, realizing, yeah, you can be in bed hungover, or you can get out and you can make some money and you probably need it because you're only getting paid $2 an hour. But fantastic place to work apart from those aspects, of course. Through to university, like I worked 3 jobs during university. When it came to, the big boy job, when it came to the graduate job, and it came to the experience I was fortunate enough to be given at Dunn with Tesco Club Card, and it wasn't just for me, I couldn't believe that, yes, I was lucky enough to get a graduate job in 2009, which was just coming off one of our other big financial crises. So if there's any graduates listening out there, keep at it. Don't worry. You will get something eventually. I was fortunate to land that position at Dunn. And not only was I fortunate to land that position, they entrusted me to work on Tesco Club Card, which for me was like, wow, that's their crown jewel, and that's massive. Now, Dunn was a mid-size entrepreneurial type startup company. When I joined, there was about 500, 600 people employed. 10 years earlier, it had been 20 people. So what I saw in Dunhumby was a culture that still had that entrepreneurial flair and still had that can-do attitude. And let's try and do lots of different things. Let's have a culture which embraces having a good time. And I took a lot from that because I knew that there was a structure and a hierarchy which comes with a company which has been around that long. And there was a frustration on my side for sure in terms of Jesus, if I just was given the chance to do this, or if they just listened to that idea, or if I, but then at the same time, you were given the bandwidth to have those ideas and to come up with them and to try and get them through like the decision-making process to get it to the other end.
Mm,
So I would take learning through all of those things because entrepreneurship, as I've realized over the last, especially over the last 6 years, is it's about how often you can motivate yourself to go again,
mm,
and getting up and not accepting any of those things that, could floor you, could just knock you to the floor. You're going to get knocked to the floor. You've got to get back up. And that energy and that spirit, which has come through all of those job experiences, I think really helped with that.
Were you good at that stage of your career? I mean, that no one will do it for you, that you need to get back up at it, or were there moments where you didn't get back up straight away, and it just you kind of had to learn that resilience?
Well, I've been described as a bit of a cockroach. I actually haven't been described as a cockroach, but I thought the analogy of that always comes into mind. Do you know, I wish I could say, I wish this would be the point at which I would, it would be much better, or maybe not much better, but it'd be the point where I could go, I wish I could be like, yeah, I have been knocked down and it's taken me a real long time to get back. I've never felt as if there was something that I couldn't overcome if I just applied myself and just worked through it. There's challenges and things that I deal with, or I'm coming to realize that I have to deal with. And there's things around mental health and everything else, which is difficult and it's tough.
Mm,
And there's a couple of things that I have. I go through lulls, I go through highs and things, but I've never lost that underarching principle of if you work hard enough at this, if you get yourself out there and get yourself motivated, you will get yourself through this. And it's never the case for me. No matter what's happened with paper planes, no matter what's happened with other aspects of work or life, it's never been the case with me that I've gone, yeah, yeah, you've done it now. You're really successful. You've really hit that. So I'm always chasing what I deem to
Mm,
be success. You
mm,
know, I've never been satisfied with kind of like where we're at. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people listening to this at an early stage, will come to find this, or if people are listening at a later stage, you very rarely take time to sit back and give yourself a pat on the back
mm.
and to give yourself a well done and praise for what you've done. I know, Trevor, you've spoken to Kate previously, Kate Davis. She's a fantastic person. She's a business coach for me. And she says to me on a regular basis, take time out and celebrate that win. Like, take time out and reflect on where you've got to. And you never get to that point. But at the same point, well, it's hard for you to get to that point, obviously, speaking from my perspective. But I've never sat back and gone, I just can't do it. It's just too difficult. Like, and there's been some real like dark times, there's been low times, but ultimately after maybe a couple of hours of being in my own thoughts or being disgruntled, I kind of get myself back and I go, right, now it's time to stop feeling sorry for yourself and go again.
Okay, that's a brilliant answer. Thank you. Thank you for that. I want to focus now on the sort of build up to the moment where you co-founded Paper Planes. And I mean, how did it come about? Yeah, businesses, as I found out in all these interviews, come about in many different ways. I've gone from the super planned to the spontaneous, got drunk down the pub and maxed out on credit cards versions of starting a business. What was your story with Steve?
Yeah, well, it's certainly, again, it's a unique one, I'd say, because going back to that whole point around entrepreneurship and wanting to run a business, I didn't know what it was going to be. Like, I never knew what my path to business was going to be, but I always thought, well, it was going to come at a certain point and it's going to be there. And, it's like kind of like the epiphany. When it happens, it will be known, and then I'll know exactly what I'm doing, that type of thing. But what happened was I was at Dunn for 7 years and I was completely happy there. And I was given loads of different experiences and I was just enjoying my career and I had great friends. I had a great social life. I met my wife there and it was completely nice and comfortable. And then I got given an opportunity from a very good friend of mine who was also involved in the club card project. Dunn would do the data for the club card. Tesco obviously would be the client. And then we had the printers. There was numerous different printers they used, and this good friend of mine owned one of the printers, and he wanted me to come and create an agency for him for the printer, like a London presence for their insight and analytics agency. And for the longest time, I was like, no, not interested. And then we'd meet up again, and then we'd have another conversation. I'd be like, I'm not sure. And then he'd have another conversation. He'd be like, I'm not sure. And in the end, I said to him, his name's Pat. And I said to Pat, look, I will come and join you, so long as I will come and give this a shot, and I'll come and do this, so long as if I have an idea for something else and I approach you with it, and I've got a solid business plan behind it, I just want to know that you'll back me on it. And to this day, I don't even know why I said it because I had no idea what it was I was thinking I
Mm,
was going to bring to him. I think maybe at the time it was something in everyday influencers or social media influencing or something along those lines because I could see
mm,
that's where marketing was going.
mm,
And to his credit, he was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll hear it out and I'll back you." And I was like, "Okay, well, that was enough for me then to make that decision to be like, okay, let's give this a go." The fork in the road moment. Do I stay here where I'm comfortable? Or do I jump into working with a print company within the UK who's looking to establish an agency in data and insights and analytics? It's do I give it a go? Do I back myself enough to think I can make that happen?
mm.
And I was like, yeah, I did it. I jumped and I did it. And I was there for a couple of months. And I was like, oh, okay, no, this is not, this isn't what I should be doing. Like, this isn't the business actually that we should be doing. It's not what the company should be doing. This isn't where we should be putting our focus. But the one thing I'd noted through the first couple of months working in this new company was, well, print, they can do a lot of smart things with personalized print. And I know through Tesco Club Card the value of getting something personalized in someone's home when you land something. We had a whole journey with Tesco where we were for a number of years trying to switch off the Club Card statement, the physical statement that was going into customers' homes, and trying to get it all onto a wallet online, like an email and an online wallet system. And the thought process for the longest time was switch it all into email and the wallet because people
Mm.
don't care really about what goes in home anymore. And then all of a sudden we saw the results and it was like, oh no, people do care about things being in home. It's just how you trigger it and when you trigger it and how personalized it is. So I knew that there was value in direct mail and print. And I was looking at the growing markets at the time, which was e-commerce and the Gymshark stories of the worlds and the Gustos who go from nothing to, £100 million businesses through online sales. And I was thinking, God, those guys lean heavily on email. But actually, with the capability that this company has, and if we could just bring in a bit of experience in e-commerce analytics and online analytics and we could do something quite special here that's not been done. And that is we could open up to e-commerce businesses
Mm.
direct mail and always on channel, similar to email, but the physical version, where whenever email stops working, where people stop clicking through an email, where they're not engaging with your email, we could give them an avenue to reach those customers with something personalized in home.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was at an actual conference in Barcelona and I was like, well, what the hell would you call this thing? Like, what is this capability? What would you call it? And I still to this day, one of my best brainwaves, I have no idea where it came from, but I was like paper planes. I was
Mm.
like paper planes, paper done differently, really cool logo. I was looking for that Uber TikTok-esque style logo
Hmm.
that you'd see on an app. And I was like, paper planes. I was like, oh my God, I've got to take this idea. I've got to run back to Leicester. I've got to present this, but to Pat, this is what we should be doing.
Right.
And the week after, sat down with Pat and I was like, this is it. Like, this is what we need to be doing. I don't want to be doing the agency focus, but we need to create the opportunity for e-commerce brands to buy into direct mail in the 21st century. So when they want to reach out to their first party data, who's not contacted, they can't reach on email, etc., they can do it via direct mail. And Pat supported it, gave me initial £20,000 to build a website, PR for it, everything else. And then that was it. We were off to the races.
What did he see in you? I mean, that's what. So you've told me that, you've said that he was, very good. He kind of kept asking you about, do you want to join this business? Do you want to do that? What do you think he saw in you?
It's funny, I was actually having this conversation with him last week. I was talking about talent and I was talking about staff, and now being on the other end of it, I was talking about what I love seeing and kind of like what really stands out. And I think what Pat saw in me is I was the last one out of the building. Whenever we used to go to his office for a week to sign off on this mailer project. So it was obviously a big deal. I think he saw a work ethic, and I think he
Mm.
saw that it really meant something to me.
Mm.
And I'd be like being kicked out of the printers on the evening. I'd be there working, like,
Mm.
they'd be kicking me out because everyone's gone home. And it was just because it meant something to me and I had work to do, and it wasn't for any other reason other than that. But I think what he really appreciated was, God, this guy, and the reason why I know that now and I didn't know it back then is because I look at my team now and I look at grafters and
Mm.
I look at people who just, it means something to them and they're working and they're not doing it for any other reason other than they're passionate about it. And I go, wow, they're the type of people I really want to build around. And I
Okay.
think that was it. I think that's what you saw in me, Trevor.
Okay. Can you just for the benefit of the listeners, so there's Pat, who was obviously very influential in all this, but Steve Kinder as well. I've seen him described as a co-founder. How does he sort of fit in this phase of the story?
Co-founder, work husband, lots of different things that we can do to describe him. And I'm sorry, yeah, it was a bit of a tangent, but it gets us to where we need to get to. So, and then Steve will come into the equation. So we've got this business. It started as a little department within a printer. The long story short is after a couple of years, we didn't grow as quickly enough as what the print business needed us to grow in order to keep us going as a department. We were standing out. It was like, what's this tech-based business here? We were losing too much money. We were bringing great brands in, but effectively we weren't growing at this pace at which we thought we would. And the print business was also in the process of being bought by Xerox. So they were going through a sale. So it became the point whereby paper planes as an idea, as a concept, was going to sit on the shelf. And I had managed to bring Steve in at that moment in time, like 6 months before this happened. I'd managed to, I knew that I was lacking a power of two, someone who knew data and someone who knew e-commerce. And him and my wife are very good friends. And they came to ours for dinner on a Saturday night. And we were in the pub. There's the pub now, going back to the pub, as it always does in Britain. And I was bit moaning to him and complaining about all these things I didn't know. And every time I'd said something I didn't know, he was like, oh, well, that's easy. You just do this. Or, oh, that's how I'd apply that. Or that's a system I bring in for that.
Mm.
And he'd been at Dunnhumby for 17 years. But that night I was like, oh my God, this is the guy that I need. Like, this is my power of two. This is my co-founder. And it took a while, but then I was doing the pat job on him. I had to convince him to join, finally convinced him to join. And there we were. And 6 months later, it was like, right, we're going to put paper planes on the shelf. We're going to make you two redundant. So we had a decision to make at that moment in time. And it was, do you want to walk out with redundancy? And do we want to go back to corporate jobs? And do we want to leave this idea on the shelf? Or do we believe in it enough? Do we think it's got enough legs that we will take on the IP, we'll take on the assets, we'll take on the branding, and the print company, they can maintain equity in the business. So give us all of the risk and give us the opportunity and let us run it as a tech business, and you guys maintain equity and you don't lose out because you weren't going to do anything with that idea anyway.
Mm.
And that's where we landed. So April 2019 is where me and Steve moved all of our stuff out of the WeWork, the nice fancy WeWork we were in with the old business. We moved it all into our windowless building in Whitechapel, in our dungeon room, as we so warmly called it. And we sat there with a brand, a loose idea of concept for code, no client base, a relatively small loan that had been given to us to cover costs for that initial period. And we started again, Trevor, and we just built it again.
Okay, so I want to take you back to the dungeon, so to speak. So you're there, and you are in your windowless office in this sort of potentially quite unpromising situation. If you look at it in one way, were you doubting yourself at that point, or were the two of you doubting yourselves about have we done the right thing? I just want to know did you spend most that you talked about? No one will do it for you. So was there that inner belief that actually, I know it doesn't feel great at the moment, but it will, or were there genuine reservations about whether you'd done the right thing?
I think my confidence has been quite knocked at that time because I'd been through basically a year of people saying, it can't be done. It's a silly idea. It's not worth doing. You should think about doing something else. My confidence was at an all-time low. And me and Steve the reason why we work so well together is we bounce off each other quite well. So he will normally have the exact opposite reaction that I do, and that works for us. And I've got to say, Steve at that moment in time was, mate, it'll be fine. We can do this. We can absolutely do it. We can smash it. We can make it work. It's going to be absolutely fine. And I was really going back and forth with my wife as well. I was like, I don't know whether we can do this. My first child had just been born, so he was 3 months old.
Mm.
And I was like, I can just go get a job, six-figure job somewhere, just do that. And she turned around to me and she was like, listen, if you don't do this now, if you don't take this on and do it now, you are forever going to be sitting there going, oh, I should have done that. What would have happened if I'd done that? What would have happened? She's like, you can't do that because you'll be a nightmare to live with. So you've just got to go and do it and kind of like see what happens.
Mm.
So Steve and my wife were the big drivers towards me taking the chance to do it at that moment in time. And maybe that's counterintuitive actually to what I was saying earlier, because probably at that moment in time, I probably was thinking to myself, oh my God, can we do this? Is this the right thing to do?
It's not counterintuitive. We're different people at different times. We have
Mm.
different sort of things. So, but it's just really interesting to do that. But let's move to the more positive. Was there then a moment where you thought, actually, yes, this is going to work. And yeah, do you remember a particular day? I mean, I'm aware of the fact, of course, that if you're talking about April 2019, that's only like 10, 11 months before the pandemic, but that pandemic affected a lot of people in their lives. Was that an issue or a good, for some people, that was a good thing rather than a bad thing, in terms of their business? In the broader scheme of things, was there a breakthrough moment that you could now look back and think, actually, this is the moment I started to believe?
This was all at the time about self-doubt in terms of whether we take that business on and do it.
Mm,
But I never for once doubted that the business concept of paper planes was going to take off and be an absolute success. The minute that I came up with the brand and January 1st, 2017, we started selling it and brands started saying, "Oh, I've heard of you guys,"
mm,
or "Oh, this is really interesting, I knew." When we got our first deal over the table, like back in 2017, I was like, wow, this is incredible. This was nothing 6 months ago, and now
mm,
it's making business. The first feature we ever got in Campaign magazine was like, holy, this is unbelievable. Like now we're actually making PR, making press. In April 2019, it was more anger. It was more, I can't believe these guys have given up on us. I can't believe they've given up on this concept. Look at the brands we've brought to the table. And just because we're not growing fast enough, you're going to pull the plug on this? And you doubt me that badly that I wouldn't, that this doesn't mean everything to me. It
mm.
was more the fact of, right, we need to show what this is now. Like we need
Right.
to show what the opportunity is. And from that moment, when we came, yeah, you're right. I mean, 6 months before the pandemic. And then all of a sudden we're sitting in our room and we're building out a nice business. And that first year we make like 100K turnover. And then COVID hits. And me and Steve were like, what? What's going to happen now? Like,
Mm,
what? Where do we go from here now? Like, what happens now? And do you know what? They say and you can't describe COVID as a cloud because it was something where it impacted negatively a lot of people. But within the cloud storms that came with COVID, the silver lining for this company was that everyone couldn't go to the street and everyone started going online to spend. And online e-commerce, which is where Paper Planes really thrives, started to go through the roof in sales.
mm,
So all of a sudden, all these marketing teams have more money to spend. And when you have more money to spend as an online marketer, you try new channels. And guess what? We were the new
mm.
channel. So it actually was probably a boosting factor for us. It was something that really drove people to try postal marketing and our approach to it for the first time. So it helped us on the journey.
Okay, so that's really interesting in terms of the dynamics of that period, which affected us all in various ways. You've sort of since been scaling and growing, but what have been the challenges of scaling? I mean, have there been things that you've found difficult? A lot of people find scaling very difficult in their business. Was that something that you or Steve found difficult? And if so, in what sense?
Well, I mean, 100%. I mean, the great thing about being an entrepreneur when you're first starting off is that you're a maverick, and actually what I realized through some harsh lessons over the years is that you can't be if you want to scale a business, you can't be a maverick. You can't actually just be this is me and this is how I'm going to do it and this is how I like doing it. You've got to bring people with you. Like you've got to ping people along the journey. And I can guarantee today, Elon Musk is not sitting on every single email and every single decision and
Mm,
every single thing. Like he just isn't. Like he has, you never see him because it's the cult of Elon, but underneath him, he's got people who do the doing, and he's got people he trusts to run the concepts and the businesses that he does so he can work on what he wants to be.
mm,
And if you want to scale a business, you've got to bring people into it. And by far, the most rewarding thing that we have done in this business, and by far the most frustrating and challenging thing, is try and bring people, resource, and talent into the business
mm,
because it is so difficult to translate your vision and your standards and what you perceive to be an organization into the right type of personality you're looking for to bring into the business, the right type of body to bring in.
as you grow bigger, of course, you might realize that bringing in people who are of a are all like you or have a certain same values and things like that might not always be the best thing because you want to bring in people with different skills and different talents and so on. I mean, did you in your early recruitments think, he's or she is one of us or is cut from the same cloth, or did you broaden thinking, well, they're not like us, but we recognize they have the skills we need to expand?
So for me, this is where it's really important to focus on coaching and ensuring that you do have
Mm,
a diverse work set, but a work set that's diverse in how they work, but are aligned to values.
mm,
Okay, so a company needs values. So going back to our little friendly dungeon in 2019, when it was me and Steve, and before we actually got any investment in the business or anything like that, we sat there and we're like, what are the values of the people we need to bring into this business? What is it that we're looking for in people that we bring in? And the four values that we run in Paper Planes that we look for in everyone is accountability, resilience, collaboration, and curiosity. Those four values are non-negotiables. That's what we're looking for in everyone that we bring in. From a work style perspective and from a diversification perspective, we've done enough profiling and we've invested in enough work behavior style pattern type projects over the years to know that me and Steve, for example, are exact opposites in terms of how we like to work and how we come together. Now, does that mean that we've got different values? No, we share the same values for the company. But whereas I am a be brief, be bright, be gone, a red, and a kind of like a right, well, let's move on to the next thing. And whereas I'm a more of a kind of like a visionary, kind of like a guardian, depending on five voices, if that's what you use. Steve is a nurturer. Steve is more, let's think it through a little bit more. Steve is more grand vision of kind of like this is where we can get to. And I'm more of he's like this is everything we're going to achieve. And in the new world, it's going to be this and it's going to be fantastic and people will do this. And I'm the one who's like, yeah, but how are we going to get there? That you need to have different styles, but you can be aligned around a company culture. And that's what we've tried to do at Paper Planes.
Have you ever disagreed over a sort of major decision, and do you have a way of overcoming disagreement so that you reach some sort of way forward?
Yeah, we disagree all the time. We disagree all the time. Two things I think on the disagreements. I mean, the first one is that's why it's important when we disagree, we're really good I think that's why it's important to know work style behaviors and profiles.
Mm,
Okay. If you don't know, if someone's just disagreeing and you don't know that, and you can't lean him back into, oh, do you know what? That's just because he's a bit more direct and a bit more red energy, as opposed to that's just because he's a little bit more blue sky and a little bit more. If you can't direct it back to that, it's very easy to become disgruntled. So I think the time that you spend doing things like Myers-Briggs or Five Voices or color energies just to understand the people around you is good. You don't need to live and die by it. You don't need to cast people by it, but it helps understanding.
mm,
So I think from a business perspective, fundamentally, that's important because we can't do our jobs properly as founders and leaders in the business if we agree on every single principle.
mm,
We are looking to build something quite complex now. We're looking to build like a self-serve, always-on dashboard for high-growth Shopify businesses across the world. We're looking to translate what has been a performance agency, holding your hand agency model into a SaaS product.
mm,
And that's not going to happen with us agreeing on every single thing that we do.
mm.
But understanding how people work behind the scenes is really important. And we like to go for a beer on a Friday. Or, I like to sit down with him and we like to go, look, let's go for a drink.
Yeah.
And we can sit down and we can go, that really got to me when you went through that.
Mm.
Or how you approached that situation really rubbed me the wrong way. And we'll sit there and we'll cheers and we'll be like, okay, well, sorry for being a dick. We'll have that conversation. And I think, look, every business is going to find something that works for them.
Mm.
Okay. And you have to find something that works for your culture. For me and Steve, that's just who we are. Like I am not that he knows, and also I'm the godfather to his daughter. So, we're close and we've become closer through this experience. But you've got to call a spade on both
Mm.
ways. But
Mm.
you then also got to be humble enough to be like, I was wrong in that situation, or this is why I reacted in the way I did in
Mm.
that context of why I reacted that way. And that's how we tend to get through it.
And that's, I suppose, one lesson in that for the listeners is that it's not only okay to disagree on things, but if you disagree, maybe not even agreeably disagree on things, but you kind of come and you have an honesty and a candor, which you actually end up stronger, as a unit, if you like, as a result. Can I ask a more general question about paper planes? About so you're all about helping businesses make better use of customer data. And yet, even in this age where we're all talking about AI and data and tech and things like that, I still see so many organizations really struggling to turn data into sort of meaningful action. Maybe they've got too much data, maybe they're drowning it, or they don't know what to do with it. Why do so many businesses struggle in this area?
Because data's complex and because we've got so much of it,
Hmm.
and because there's so much noise around what you should be doing with it and what you shouldn't be doing with it. You know, Clive Humby said 20 years ago, one of the founders of Dunn Humby, data is the new oil of the modern times. And it is. It's just, and there's so much more of it today than there even was 5 years ago. Like the data that we have available to us is multiplying to uncontrollable levels sometimes. I think that sound data principles for me are always driven around why are you collecting it in the first place and ultimately what you're looking to do with it, what you're looking to achieve with it. If you are a customer, direct to consumer business, data is your oil, it's your currency, because effectively you can't do anything without understanding the behavior and the intentions of a customer.
Hmm.
And you must be comfortable knowing that a customer can't be trusted in terms of what they tell you as to
Hmm.
why they buy or how they buy. The thing that can be trusted the most is the empirical data, the actual
Hmm.
transactional data that sits behind the scenes in terms of what governs what people actually do and what they actually buy and how they actually spend. I think it's become complex. I think that, you would normally, people were told they would need to bring in analysts to work through data, or you have to employ a data agency to understand your data, or you have to be doing really smart things with data and collecting it in multiple different ways. I think obviously the world is now on the brink of a massive change with the rise of AI. Because with AI and with data mining and data principles, what you can do with data, how you interpret data, how you understand data is going to change dramatically over the next couple of years. This is really the kind of like the commoditization, can't say that word, of data principles. This is the ability to really take what has been quite complex and difficult and put it into a framework now where you can really help build understanding of your customer base and where things are going. But I think it's difficult and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, Trevor.
Hmm. I mean, some people could just feel an overwhelm. We were talking about too much data, and some people just might think I'm not very good with data, or why do I need data when I can see in the eyes of my customers their happy faces, or
Yeah,
whatever it is. I mean, is the answer sort of somewhere in between, if you like? Is the useful, intelligent, as you said? Why are you using this data? Why do you want this data? It's always a combination, is it, of the data and the intuition or the experience of the person who is asking the questions.
I think it is in between. Yeah, I mean, look, gut feel is at the end of the day with human beings, and you're always going to have a gut feel, and you have to go with what you think works best. But you can't ignore data that's smacking you in the face with the
Yeah,
obvious.
yeah.
You have to be comfortable enough to know that you can be wrong in certain things. And if I look at the specific principles in which the reason why Paper Planes has been able to build a market in postal marketing and direct mail in an industry that was 80 years old, in a space where everyone had their perceptions of what direct mail was, that there's enough print companies out there globally, there's enough kind of like noise around direct mail. The reason why we were able to create a successful business, it's gone from, zero to millions in like the last 5 years, has been because we've come through and we've gone, right, we are going to build campaigns for our clients which isn't about getting the most volume of mail out there, and getting the biggest postage discount and doing all that stuff that kind of like you'd expect a mass channel, broadcast channel to be doing.
Hmm.
We are going to look at their data and we're going to allow them to apply granularity to the targeting of customers to ensure that they are sending the right message at the right time with the right data points.
Hmm.
And then we're going to give them a dashboard so they can look at the results that are driven off of them investing in direct mail as a channel that
Hmm.
complements email, that complements SMS. So when we get to the why, as to why should I be doing this? Why, out of everything I can invest in for marketing, am I also investing in paper planes?
Hmm.
They can be crystal clear as to what the intent is behind that investment, like what it's
Okay.
doing, how it's doing it, and what impact it's having. So, in that regard, we are making data very clear to the brand in terms of what it is they should be doing, why they should be doing it, and how they justify it. And that's what makes, us, that's how we've been able to build a business. Because actually, the big change that was needed in the direct mail industry was let's get really focused on the bottom line, the sales impact, the data, the impact of campaigns. Let's not lean on QR codes in order to understand if someone's come back. Let's not look at voucher code inputs in order to see if someone's come back. Let's get really granular as to what people are doing. And rather than sending it to a million, let's pick the right 10,000 people to send it to. And
Okay.
that's where we'll start to see a real difference.
Okay. All right. Great. So alongside running paper planes, you've also passionate about sort of mentoring. I understand you do a bit of guest lecturing as well, and helping others develop. Why's that become an important part of your professional life?
I've been in the shoes of someone who felt as if access to advertising and marketing as a profession was something that was off limits to me.
Mm.
So I've been in the shoes of someone who's really wanted to get into this industry and not feeling like I had a chance to do it. And I worked, 3 internships across marketing agencies within marketing. I got turned down for every advertising and marketing job there was going. When I finished uni, I ended up taking a job in construction project management because it was the only thing I could get. I knew I worked hard. I knew I had a passion for it. And I feel that now, and I look back at my time at university and I look back at my time when I was coming up and I go, what were the things that I really took from lectures? And it was never the theory. It was never a teacher going through a book going, now we're going to learn Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I was like, how the hell do you apply that to business?
Mhm.
Like, does anyone sit down with their textbook on a Monday at the board, at their kickoff meeting and go, let's look at Maslow and how we're doing against Maslow? So I was like, but the things I always took most joy out of was when business owners came in and they talked about their experiences in business and they talked about what they were doing in business. And I just feel an obligation now that I am fortunate enough to have a business which has scaled to do the same for this generation. Like
Mm.
wherever I can get an opportunity to go in and talk about marketing principles from a business perspective or talk about what our clients are doing and how that's being used to complement the theory.
And it ties right back into what you said right at the start. Like if you're a graduate out there, don't give up. There is hope. Because if you're going in and you're talking to the up and coming generation, it's quite scary. For a lot of those people in terms of career paths and so on. So I'm guessing that's part of the drive as well.
If you're a graduate out there, even if you've decided not to go to university, because some of the most entrepreneurial people out there right now will probably be looking at university going, that's a big cost for something
Mm.
that I'm not sure I need to be doing. At Paper Planes, we've taken on apprentices. We've taken on like universal credit roles that have been some of our most successful. We have open internships working with numerous universities across the country. And I do my bit in terms of the lecturing. Like we
Mm.
make ourselves accessible to young talent because fundamentally, to me, it's the values of this business. If you can show those and you can show the hard work and graft, then that's what we're interested in.
Mm.
I don't, other than any degree or where you've graduated or what you've done or anything else. It's like, can you come in and is this going to be a passion for you?
Okay. So finally, I mean, we've talked about a kind of like a warts and all journey, if you like, through your entrepreneurial career, but we want to give our listeners the confidence they need to succeed. So drawing on your experiences, as somebody who's done a lot of things right in there, I mean, what guidance would you offer to someone who's either launching or thinking of launching their business?
Do your due diligence. So work out who it is exactly you are going to be selling to in order for your business to be successful, and go speak to them. Go speak to them like I did in the early days of Paper Planes, the agencies, the e-commerce managers, the people I knew in marketing. I sat down with them and I said, what pricks your ears up in terms of an opportunity, and learn from that. Because if you don't have a market for your idea, you may think you've got the best idea in the world, but if people aren't saying to you, that's good, I'd buy that, or that's a missing gap, that's something that you're going to give yourself a very difficult position. So do your due diligence, and be ready to stick by your convictions and, not give up, in a way, if you can, having some sort of war chest, having something aside that you can give yourself, let's say 12 months or 6 months or whatever, just so you've got a bit of a runway, then that's good, because it probably won't happen as quick as what you think it will in terms of the idea. And you've got to stick with it. You've got to have perseverance and resilience. It's not a be all or end all to me. It might be the case of you have to take on a part-time job, or you have to kind of like work on something else, but don't lose the overall vision for what you want to do, or the motivation for it, but accept it won't be plain sailing.
And that seemed to be a great way to end that interview with Dan Dunn. I mean, one thing that really stood out to me in that conversation was this amazing combination of ambition and practicality. Dan clearly believes in thinking big. He talks about building businesses, creating opportunities, and pursuing ideas with real conviction. But at the same time, he's refreshingly realistic about what entrepreneurship actually involves. In this story, there was no overnight success. Instead, there was a recurring theme of hard work, persistence, and the willingness to keep moving forward when things don't go according to plan. I was also struck by how often other people popped up in Dan's story at key moments. Right at the start, his nan, whose entrepreneurial flair left a lasting impression. His co-founder, Steve, whose skills complemented his own. And perhaps most importantly, his wife, whose encouragement at an important time helped him to take the leap when the future looked very uncertain. For anyone listening who is thinking about starting a business, scaling a business, or simply taking some other kind of bold step in their career, Dan's message is both encouraging and realistic. Do your homework, understand your market, back yourself, stay resilient, and remember that success rarely arrives in a straight line. So thank you to Dan, and thank you to all of our listeners for the wonderful support you're giving the show. If you enjoy this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate and review through your usual podcast provider. And if you'd like to find out more about the Merri-Cast, look for me, Trevor Meriden, or our business Merriborn at merriborn.co.uk. But until next time, thanks for listening.